ISIS to find out how ISIS makes it easier to wire a car and still have all the cool toys. So we're with Jay, and he's going to tell us what ISIS is doing in this Camaro.
At its most basic thing, ISIS turns things on and off. It can't get much more complicated than that, but we do it differently. So instead of in the car one big box of relays and fuses, we let you put separate smaller modules in the car, which means that I put them where I need them. It's less wire, it's less snakes and bundles of wire running through the car, and then we can build features and functions in you can't get from a big box of fuses and relays. So in the case of the Camaro, we're doing everything that any other wiring harness would, but we're also doing a little more, and we're doing it with less wire. And it really starts with what we call the master cell. And that's kind of that brain. And that's part of it. I talked before about how you split the system up. The master cell is in the cab, and all the switches connect to that. The brake pedal switch, turn signal, ignition, backup switch off the transmission, all those switches get wired locally, and they send commands to these guys, which is the power cell, that turns things on and off. So this guy right here is taking commands from the front, and it's controlling the headlights and the turn signals and the parking lights and the cooling fan and the ECU and the starter and the horn, but it's all wired right here. So you don't have that big bundle of wire going from all these lights back into the cab. All you have going back in the cab is this little data cable right there. So we're taking all that weight and all that complexity out, and this is what you have to fish through the car. So what you do from here is you're wiring from this power cell all through the front of the car. So the longest run of wire is from here to that headlight right there, instead of from that headlight all the way back in to one central box. So we're really trying to take all the complexity and all that mess of wire out down to just this data cable.
Okay, I see on this box here we got all sorts of blinking lights and lights not on and fuses missing. What's all that mean?
Okay, well first off, people love blinking lights. Now, I'm kidding when I say that, but those blink lights are really important because they tell you what's going on. A lot of people look at this, you're right, I mean wiring is scary, and all of a sudden now you got this wiring system with blinking lights and microchips and all that. Those blinking lights actually help you wire it faster, and then when there are problems they tell you what's going on. So each of these outputs here does have a light, and that light will tell me if it's on, it'll tell me if it's off, but it'll also tell me if there's something bad in the circuit. There's also other lights in here that will tell me that things are communicating correctly and things are okay. So when I want to find a problem, let's say my headlights aren't working, I look at the master cell, it tells me my switch is okay, I look at the lights here, and it will tell me if I blew a fuse, it'll tell me if my light bulb burned out, if I broke a wire. So there's functions in there and diagnostics all through those lights that help you understand what's going on.
And each power cell does the same thing?
Each power cell does the same thing. Now we're talking about another cell that we call inMotion that does windows, but fundamentally the power cells are exactly the same. They each get an address that says I'm the front power cell, so I'm controlling the ignition and the headlights, or I'm the rear power cell and I'm doing the brake lights and the fuel pump. So they're same box, just they're told to do different things.
Okay. Now when you said inMotion, a lot of times power windows, have a reverse polarity. So is that what that does?
Exactly. So it lets you control, just like everything up here is controlled off a real simple switch, you can use any switch to drive your windows up and down, or your locks, or a convertible top, or let's say I want a linear actuator to raise and lower the trunk. I don't need a high current switch or a switch that changes polarity. I can use anything. We can look at that. That's in the back of the car. So this is that power cell, just like the front. So remember, you put a power cell where you need it. The front power cell is doing your headlights and your turn signals and the ECU power and the starter. This guy right here is doing my brake lights, my turn signals, my fuel pump. When Joe puts some audio in here, it's going to get powered from there. So this is here, and again, you just have that one thin data cable going front to back in the car. And you bring it power from the battery. So again, it's not a lot of wire running front to back. Now, he's got power windows and power locks. How do you do that? Normally you've got a switch, and in that switch it's got to carry all the current, and it's got to be a switch designed to change polarity. inMotion is like a power cell, but instead of 10 on and off outputs, it's got 5 that change polarity. So in this case, we're doing the 4 windows, we're doing the power locks off that. He can control it off of any switch, or our key fob, or any of our touch screens. So he's got a lot of flexibility with inMotion. The other thing that's really cool about inMotion is it's actually smarter than a power cell, because it learns how much current it should take to drive the window up or drive the window down. So you train it, it runs the motors up and down, and then I can hit a button, drive the window all the way down. When the window hits the bottom, it stalls, the current goes up, we detect that, we shut it off. So I don't have to worry about what happens if I lean on the button. I'm not going to burn up the motor, I'm not going to blow the fuse, we automatically shut it off. I can do the same thing, I can drive it up. If something blocks the window, it's drawing more current than it should, so it shuts the window off. So you get an anti-pinch feature too, with motion.
So how do you program these sorts of things?
So 95% of our kits don't get programmed. They get programmed from us, there's a standard configuration, and in that configuration it says, this wire goes to my headlight switch, this wire from the power cell goes to my headlight. And it's laid out function by function by function. Headlights, turn signals, parking lights, high beams, it's all set up for you. But then in that standard configuration, you can pick a couple of different options. For example, depending on the way the turn signals are set up in the back, in some cases, the turn signal and the brake lights are the same filament in the bulb.
Right.
Or in some cases, you've got a separate filament that's the brake light. You just pick different inputs from that configuration to make those changes. So most of our customers aren't doing any custom code, but for the guy who says, yeah, I want mine a little different, either we pre-configure it for you and mail it and send it to you pre-configured, or you call us up and say, hey, I want to change, when I turn my ignition off, I want my cooling fan to run for 2 minutes. We make that change, we email it to you, you use our in-code programmer to update the system. Real easy, it takes about 90 seconds. So most customers are using it literally out of the box, but for the guy who does want to make those changes, you call our tech line, we work through it and get it all done for you.
So you mentioned cooling fans. What other sorts of changes are possible?
You know what is really common? Close the doors, your interior lights dim down over 5 or 10 seconds. And what a lot of guys want is their daily driver does this. And so I want my 67 Camaro to behave like my daily driver. I want a one-button start. So I just have one button on the dash. I push and hold that, it starts the engine for me. Or I'm in a racing application. When I shut my engine off, I want my cooling fan and my water pump to stay on for a couple minutes. Or we talked about the theater dimming. Or when I turn my ignition off, I want my headlights to stay on for 30 seconds. So most of what customers are asking for are delays and timing and patterns, or I want one button on the dash to do multiple things. So those are the types of things, the types of changes we're making for customers. But now we've got a product over here called Environment that takes that control to a whole new level. Let's go take a look at Environment.
So tell me more about the vintage air system.
All right, so you remember we talked before that we turn things on and off. So whether it's a headlight or power to the ECU or a starter solenoid, we turn things on and off. And we, a couple years ago, came out with this thing called Environment. And we worked with the team at Vintage Air to create an interface from ISIS into their Gen 4. And the cool thing about that is it now gets you another level of how you control something else in the car, how you turn something else off. So with Environment, I now have the flexibility to really use any switch to control my fan speed, my blend position, my temperature, right into ISIS. So we give you, as part of the Environment, it's got a custom loomed harness that mates directly into their ECU, so there's really nothing to do outside of connecting into ISIS and plugging it in there. That lets you control everything for your heating and air conditioning in the car. Now the thing that's pretty cool about it, and that kind of leads into this new product here called inTOUCH Net. inTOUCH Net becomes that gateway from any smart device into ISIS. So whether it's an iPad, an iPad mini, an iPhone, some kind of Android product, a Windows Surface, or even there's a new Kenwood head unit that we work with, I now have a complete set of screens through whatever my smart device is to control everything in the car. In this case, even the heating and air conditioning. So I can control my fan speed, I can control my temperature, and I control my blend position right here. So I've got a car that I have the interior kind of mapped out, and I got a real specific look and feel. I can have one single touch screen, maybe an iPad French into the dash, or some kind of head unit, where that's my command center for the whole car. So outside of just the heating and air conditioning, off here I'm controlling everything. My ignition, I'm cranking the engine, I'm controlling all my lights, I'm driving my windows up and down, I'm locking and unlocking the car from the smart devices in my pocket, or maybe a head unit in the dash, or even like an iPad or some kind of Android tablet mounted in the dash. So it's a whole new level of control, whether it's lights, the engine, or even the heating and air conditioning, now from whatever your smart devices.
Well, that's pretty impressive stuff. Is there a place we can learn more about this?
Absolutely. You can get it from www.isispower.com, so it's isispower.com, or you can call our main line at 847-232-1991.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Trevor. Take care.